The Temporary Foreign Workers Program allows employers the ability to hire workers from abroad in order to fill a short-term need. But even the federal government admits there have been abuses of the program. So effective today, new rules are in place aimed at protecting temporary foreign workers. Raj Sharma is an immigration lawyer and partner at Stewart Sharma Harsanyi law firm here in Calgary, and he's with me in the studio. Hello.
Good morning.
Thanks for coming in. So can you briefly tell us about the new powers that Ottawa will have to help temporary foreign workers?
Starting in 2014, the government will have the power to go and inspect workplaces and demand documentation, interview foreign workers to ensure that everything's in compliance without a warrant. In most cases, the employers will be given advance notification. So this is just another sort of reform to the temporary foreign worker that's been tinkered with for the past 4 or 5 years now.
So they can do spot checks, essentially. They can just show up unannounced and make sure that everything's as it should be.
Yeah, and you know, of course, I would have to welcome such a move because there's a lot of exploitation going on with temporary foreign workers. And I'm not talking about the highly skilled engineers and other individuals that we're getting in from the U.S. and other developed economies. I'm talking about the low-skilled temporary foreign workers, individuals that are working at ethnic restaurants, for example, that comprise a high number of foreign workers in Alberta right now.
What evidence do we have of that? Have you seen those kinds of abuses happening here in Calgary?
It's everywhere. It's in the news, and the unfortunate part of it is that these foreign workers come here. Sometimes they pay exorbitant fees to these so-called placement agencies, $5,000, $10,000, $20,000 for a job. They show up here, the job doesn't exist. They're then made to work in deplorable conditions, low wages, not in compliance with the Employment Standards Code, and unfortunately, they're trapped. They're kind of indentured. And they're stuck with the employer that's kind of brought them here. If they complain, they'll probably be deported because that's the typical government response to individuals that are working not in compliance with their work permits. So unfortunately, they can't complain to the government, and the employers kind of know this, or at least the sort of shady ones do.
Right. So what difference do you think these new rules will make in terms of protecting temporary foreign workers?
Unfortunately, I don't have a lot of confidence in these new rules. These rules have been proposed in the past. I mean, a lot of these rules around the temporary foreign worker program and reforms and in immigration, they're full of sound and fury and very little substance. For example, the government announced that there's going to be a blacklist of employers that exploit foreign workers, and these blacklisted employers will not be able to utilize this program. Well, this blacklist has been in operation since 2011, and I was checking that website before I came into the studio today, and that went up 2 years ago. There's still no employers on that blacklist. So I don't know. I'm hopeful because obviously we don't want to we don't want a situation where easy exploitation of vulnerable individuals is possible. Unfortunately, I'll have to take a wait and see approach.
As you said, the foreign workers themselves are in a bit of a bind because if the employer is found not to be in compliance, the workers themselves often get sent home, which is absolutely what they don't want. So they, in a sense, get punished as well as the employer. What do you think should happen when an employer is found to be breaking the rules? What should happen to the employees, the temporary foreign workers?
Well, I think that the only sort of humanitarian response to such a situation like that is to give them an opportunity to find another employer to somehow rectify the situation. As it stands right now, they have only about 90 days to restore their status in Canada, and so there was 11 Filipino workers that were brought into Ontario. They were promised skilled positions. Instead, they were forced to work for about $900 a month at a different position. It required the Philippine consulate to raid that work site. The employer was not charged by the RCMP, and the workers ended up being removed from Canada. So what I would say is there's always going to be a tension between the demands of business and the demands, of course, of Canadian laborers and, of course, what we owe these foreign workers. So that tension is going to be a difficult one to balance.
Mm-hmm. How easy is it for employers to abuse the system right now as it stands?
Right now, it's very easy. There's been no prosecutions, as far as I know, of any employer under the Immigration and Refugee Protection Act. I'm not aware of any criminal charges being brought against any employers. What I see in my practice is that foreign workers, that if this gets out, the foreign worker is deported. I've seen it a lot. We filed human rights complaints. We've gone to the Employment Standards Code. The best we can do is maybe get back some of the wages that are owed to these individuals. But really, it's a no-win situation for many low-skilled temporary foreign workers here.
What explains the lack of prosecution of these employers?
I'm not sure. I mean, the law is there to be utilized. Perhaps the RCMP is somewhat, maybe the Immigration Refugee Protection Act, they're a little bit unfamiliar with the use of that legislation as opposed to the criminal code. I'm not sure why there's a lack of prosecutions. That's a good question perhaps to ask. And again, like, I welcome these changes. It shouldn't be that easy to get temporary foreign workers. I think it's a good idea that we're making it a little bit difficult and onerous, and that we do have now provisions to check up on the situation of these temporary foreign workers. You know, Jennifer, I'm reminded of the Chinese head tax. We brought in these unskilled laborers almost a century ago, or more than a century ago, and we wanted their labor, and we wanted them to build our railways, but we didn't want them to bring their wives or children here, and there was no path for them to become permanent residents. That's the same situation we have for low-skilled temporary foreign workers today. There's no path for permanent residence for them, and that's why they can be exploited.
Right. What would you like to see in addition to these new rules that have been brought in today?
I'd like them to enforce the laws that are in place. I'm not sure that they need any new laws. I welcome these new laws. I would like to see enforcement of existing laws, and I would like to see employers held to account.
Raj, thank you so much for coming in.
My pleasure.
Raj Sharma is an immigration lawyer here in Calgary. The federal government's new rules governing employers of temporary foreign workers come into effect today.